Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the last committee meeting of the Development and Operation Services Standing Committee for this term of council. Thank you very much for showing up tonight. I will call the standing committee to order. Adoption of the minutes. Can I please get a mover and seconder? The adoption of the agenda, I apologize. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Deputy Mayor Saunderson, that the content of the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee agenda for October 10th be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Declarations of pecuniary. Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. I know we received some letters with respect to the development south of Lockhart and Brock, and I'm wondering if it's possible to move it up in the agenda in terms of, I know it wasn't booked as a 10-minute, but for business purposes, would it be?
I was going to ask if the committee had any issues with that, so
no, clearly not.
I will ask it now. Anyone show any visible? Excellent. So we'll go from there. Any declarations of pecuniary interest?
It's actually not a declaration of pecuniary interest, Mr. Chair. Just to advise, I have to leave early today at 5:30. My apologies.
That's okay. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to Cameron Street School, P 2018-34, my brother is an owner of the commercial property south of Cameron Street Public Schools, so under the code of conduct I will be stepping away.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Business arising from the previous meeting. Seeing none, we have no formal deputations this evening, but I, as requested, will move the public delegations 5 minutes apiece, not dwelling on the same concept, so you can speak up for 5 minutes. Matthew, you have that option as well if you'd like to come now, so you can go enjoy the rest of your evening. Do we have anybody here this evening that would like to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would
Thank
like
you.
to speak.
Yes, thank you very much. Please come up.
And I'd like to be the coach.
So would...
Is this a good time?
Yes, it's a good time.
Okay.
So if you're coming up together, we're going to give you a combined 5 minutes.
We will be concise.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Just introduce yourself, please, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Yvonne Hamlin, and with me is Joanne Bowden. We are residents of Gulfview and Brock Crescent, respectively. We are here tonight on behalf of about 60 taxpayers who are living on the streets surrounding the Eden Oak development, which is currently a dust bowl in the area of Poplar and here Ontario Street. Given that we're speaking for many tonight and that these residents have asked us to come and they need to know their concerns are being fairly heard tonight. And so I would ask you to give us some flexibility if we go over our 5-minute mark. I have to say, I bet you can't believe I'm standing here again, because I cannot believe I'm standing here again. And I digress a little bit to say, we bought our home on Gulfview a few years ago. We knew there was a development going in for 500 homes, fine. I knew there was a stormwater pond beside us, fine. I knew we had a sump pump, all good. And then you know what, it was downhill from there. Because, we moved in and I thought, I'm gonna go introduce myself to the engineering department, because I know that's what you do, that's the stage of development we were at. Engineers, it's all about engineers at draft plan approval. I met the staff, they were all great. So anyway, here we are. We're here, Joanne and I, to ask for 4 things this evening. And I have to say, I was pecking out some words on the computer as my notes for tonight. And the more I pecked away, the angrier I got. And I am someone who never loses their temper, virtually never. And I am so angry as I stand here. So I am really gonna try and hold it in. Okay, so we're here for 4 things tonight. Number 1, an independent engineering review of the drainage and flooding issues on the Eden Oak site. Some people would call this a peer review. You might even call it a second opinion. Number 1. Number 2, we would like an independent arborist hired by the town to ascertain the nature of the issues affecting the mature trees. 3, we would like the immediate preparation and implementation of a winter care plan. 4, we want the completion of the permanent fence and the removal of the falling down temporary fence. And why are we here? We have lost complete confidence in this process, and we hope after you've heard our few remarks that you will agree and will make some motions to help us. So number 1, drainage and flooding issues. Okay, how would any of you like to wake up every morning, and it's been a year now, wondering if today's the day your house is going to flood? Okay, none of you would like that. Trust me. It was a year ago, it was October last year, that Eden Oak went in and cleared that development site. They took off all the topsoil, they took off all the trees, and yes, the drainage system that had been operating on that property for decades without issue. Without a thought to what the impact would be, and perhaps without knowing there was a drainage system in place, and may I say, without caring if there was a drainage system in place. So it was the 1st of November last year when I first realized our sump pump was going off every 4 minutes, because we had someone who was visiting from Alberta staying in the basement, who was working for the development community his whole career and said, hey, have you thought it might be that site outside that's causing this problem? And I have to say my response was, oh no, how can that be? Okay, anyway, I met Joanne in early December, and by January, every 29 seconds our sump pump was going off. That next morning, a contractor came and they started moving dirt around on the property. They created some rivers, they created this, they created that, and lo and behold, I thought Nirvana had arrived when our sump pump was finally running every 20 minutes. Notwithstanding continual meetings with staff and the odd one with the developers to see what could be worked out about the issues on this site, we are nowhere. And I can tell you the meeting we had with the developer, there were 5 guys who came in, and some of your staff who of course were very polite and nice. The 5 guys came in suits, they sat across from Joanna and I like this, they stared at us. For a whole hour they said no and they walked out. I have to say, you know, in my day as a municipal lawyer, you might say I was the queen of subdivisions. I did subdivisions in Vaughan, Pickering, Ajax, Richmond Hill. I was it. But I haven't been doing subdivisions for, you know, long enough to say I don't know anymore. But all I'm saying is I have never seen developers treat anybody like that, and I have never seen developers treat a community and a town like they have treated this one, really. So what are we living with today? And I'm still talking about ponding and flooding. We have continual pop-up ponds. Pop-up ponds, not because of the rain, no, because there must be, I'm suggesting, springs in that field, because they bubble up. You can watch them bubble up. They get bigger, eventually the residents who live on Brock and Lockhart, they get spongy, you know, grass in their backyard. Some pumps start going non-stop. Heavy equipment then arrives. They dig some, you know, channels to the temporary siltation pond, which is beside my house, to drain some of this water. Until next time. And, you know, we get more pop-up ponds, and we get lily pads, and, you know, the whole thing. All I can say is, you know, last week my sump pump was running every 4 minutes, the next day 7 minutes, the next day 8 minutes, 4 minutes, 13 minutes. Can you imagine having to worry about that every day? I cannot tell you, and I'm not the only one. Now, out of the 16 taxpayers in that area, very few of us have sump pumps, but Joanne tells me the guy who lives down by the Admiral School, he's having the same problem as me, erratic sump pump behavior. So, what am I saying? I'm saying the temporary solutions that this developer is putting in place, pending them really getting going on the site, are not working. We have lost total confidence in this developer, and so what we are asking for is a second opinion on these drainage and flooding issues, both as relates to groundwater and surface water. And I make the distinction because I cannot tell you how many times I have had engineers for Condolan and the town say it's all about surface water, and I tell you it is not all about surface water. I don't have to be an engineer to say when I see water springing up from the pond or from the field, it is groundwater. So what I'm saying is we need an engineer who's experienced in ground and surface water to do a second opinion. And this guy or a woman or whatever has to be independent. And I say independent, and what do I mean by that? They are not currently retained by the town working on this project, and they are not currently retained by the town working on any project. We want an independent engineering consultant to have a look at this. And number three, we want to, as the residents, and Joanna and I are happy to take on this role, we would like to have some input and agreement on who is retained, because we want to make sure that they are independent and have the expertise that's required. That's number one. Oh, and by the way, we spoke to an engineering consultant today and said, let's say your firm, was retained to do this. How much would this cost? And they said, probably a week of someone's time. $5,000 to $10,000. That was their guess. And they would come up with a list of recommendations and, should do this, should do that, did they miss this? Anyway, maybe you think it's 15. I don't know. I'll just give you what he said. Number two, trees. And I don't stand here as a crazy talking about trees.
Miss Hamlin,
yes?
if I can just interject, right now you're at 8 minutes.
I'll do my best. Trees. There are a lot of mature trees that border this development site in the backyards of people who have lived there for decades. And they have watered these trees, they have made little oases in their backyards, and I will say that these trees, on the view of inexperienced people, but people who've been living with these trees for decades, are dying. The roots are exposed, the cedar hedges are showing brown spots, and I would ask, therefore, if you would please consider this. We would ask that the town retain an independent arborist to come, and independent in the same way as I've explained what an independent engineering consultant is. An independent arborist to come and look at these, look at all the landscaping that's dying, and all the residents know where their properties are to deal with this property. And I have to say, I will just as an aside say, I understand that 108 trees were cut down when this developer got his permit to take trees down, and no one asked that that developer replace any of those trees as is required by your tree bylaw, and I just leave that thought with you. 3, winter care plan. Someone said to me today, do you realize on development sites across the province there are winter care plans being put in place? And I'm like, what's a winter care plan? Whoa, it has to do with all that dirt, 60 acres of dirt, among all these homes that, this is a good time of year to be planting grass seed. And so I would ask if we could have staff have a look and make some recommendations and insist that this developer do a winter care plan for dust control on this site. So I think I had a fourth one. What was that? The fence. Coming to the end. We have a fence that was put up around this site, I don't know when, sometime last spring. It is a mess. It is all falling down. And some weeks ago, in August, the developer sent a letter out to some of the residents saying they were about to put a fence up. It would take 3 to 4 weeks. So that has long since passed. So we believe that it's time for the town to step up and require that developer to remove the falling down temporary fence and put up that permanent fence before it does one thing further. So in conclusion, we have a developer on this site. For some reason, they don't care. And you know what? It's not for us to wonder why. For a while I think, does he have this problem? Does he have that problem? You know what? Who cares? We don't care what their problem is. It is time for the town to step up and require the best practices from our land development community. They are bullies. I say this with fullest respect.
Miss Hamlin?
And I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowden, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. And
I
thank
will
you.
ask before we get started, that took 11 minutes.
Okay.
Please,
It's done to summarize.
thank you very much.
Just to let you know that Yvonne and I don't come here without doing our homework. We consult with engineers, builders, planners, so we know what is a reasonable ask and what is pie in the sky asks. And we've done our homework, and we need you to respect the fact that we've done our homework. And when we come to you with things that other communities are keeping on top of. And we want you to keep on top of it because we are voters and we are taxpayers and we have rights. And no one has the right to come and affect my backyard. You know that, I know that, everybody knows that, but yet these developers think it's okay. And the only reason they're not going to think it's okay, when this town stands up and says it's not okay. We're important, and we need somebody to come and say, we have an engineering plan, we hoped it was gonna work, we all had faith, we wanted it to work. We don't want these issues, we don't want to come to council. I don't want this to consume my life, but it is. And so you need to seriously consider what it'd be like if this was in your backyard. And we need to take action. And we need everybody to come to the realization that what we thought was going to work is not working. And the developer is not taking responsibility for the fact that it's not working. And our engineering department doesn't have a solution of why it's not working. And so let's hire somebody. We were quoted a cost between $5,000 and $15,000, which, from what we've been told, the developer should have to pay, to find a second opinion about this. Because if we keep pushing this forward, we push it forward into a problem for the 541 homeowners that are going to buy in good faith that this town has only given permits based on acceptable work. And this, I'm afraid, is not acceptable work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight and giving that very informative opinion. I will ask for staff to review these comments and take this information and action back to the developer. And hopefully by Monday we can have our last council meeting, we can have some answers. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think part of our committee work was to have some conversations about these things, and I know sometimes we can't do them with all the information, but I think I'd like to hear a little bit from staff in terms of some of the avenues they would pursue going forward. I think that's reasonable for us to hear that now, rather than having to do all that work at council. I know there's some circumstances that right now, that being our last council meeting this term, but I'm just interested in hearing what a little bit that staff has. I know they could be a little bit prepared because they did receive the same letters that we did.
Okay, who would you like me to direct that question through to?
I guess Mr. McDonald.
Mr. McDonald?
First, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met with Ms. Bowden and Ms. Hamlin last Friday. They've provided us with a number of issues from various residents. We have committed to them in that meeting that we would review those issues and take them up in writing with the developer. What has transpired here tonight is a little bit different than our discussion on Friday in terms of independent drainage review and independent arborist, winter control plan, all valid comments that we'll have to review and report back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you. I think they're very reasonable requests. I am surprised that they are back or that they even have to be back. And so I look forward to hearing from staff as to what we can do to fix this.
Excellent. I concur. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much. Please go and enjoy your evening. Mr. Pretty, you had made mention to me that you would like to speak. Would you like to wait until the report is given, or would you like to make a brief comment right now?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm here to follow through with something that's on the agenda near the later half, but I think I'd like to add something just quickly, like 30 seconds. I understand when development happens, it's a process of two things. If you're a homeowner and you have construction happening, like the road that was done, for example, I'm a resident in a house that was beside a construction zone for about 1.5 years. It is a difficult time when you see machinery, the moving of land, and all that stuff. It's dusty, as the lady said there. It can be muddy. You know, it's very challenging actually when things are dug up and you've got machinery going. I would only have to say, as a sense of mediation, is just, for example, a fence. You know, letting people know where the developer's at with the fence. So the mediation comes from talking to the developer, letting the homeowners know that that's a priority, for example. As we know, we've only started in the grand scheme of the development, and I would make recommendation as some manner of memo to the homeowners through the developer and the town to keep informed the people that live near developments, because we've only just started. So I'd recommend that as a wise way to keep people on base here. But I would like to wait though. It's regarding engineering. Bob, I'd like to wait.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Let's get right into the staff reports, please, and thank you. 6.1, P 2018-31, proposed zoning bylaw amendment for Simcoe County Corporation, additional uses. Ms. Farrell, would you like to provide introduction to their staff report?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I believe everyone knows where this is. This is the new Simcoe County housing building that's being constructed across from Home Depot on High Street. There are two proposed new uses for the ground floor of the building that is under construction. One would be a school, sort of an adult learning school. And the second proposed use for the ground floor would be a life skills training center. These are both uses that the Simcoe County is interested in putting on the ground floor because they are of the view, and I certainly agree with their opinion, that some of the people attending these facilities are going to be residents of these two buildings. So that's why they'd like to locate them within the ground floor. They're also having other government offices on the ground floor of the new building, and there should be a fair amount of synergy between the proposed services being offered in that building. Mr. Chair, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. I believe everyone knows where this is located. They do have adequate parking for the uses that they're proposing.
Excellent. Are there any questions or comments from the public before the committee considers the report? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee support and refer the following staff report to the next regular meeting of council. That council receives staff report P 2018-31 and enact and pass an amending zoning bylaw to permit a life skills center and a school as additional uses in the residential fourth density exception 7 R4-7, specifically on the ground floor of the affordable housing building addressed at 485 2nd Street. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Does the committee have any questions or comments regarding the staff report? Deputy Mayor?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chair. As a member of the Simcoe County Housing Corporation, I certainly see the wisdom of this, and as Nancy said, the synergy in putting these uses there will serve in large part some of the population that lives there, and provide much needed services in the downtown area that is accessible for most of our residents by bus route or by foot. So I certainly support it.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Moving on, 6.2, P 2018-32, part lot control exemption bylaw, Riverside, Collins Street, blocks 11 and 12, 51M-1124. Ms. Farrer, would you like to provide?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is two blocks of townhouses, total of 12 units, 6 units in each block, and all we're doing is creating the individual lots so that they can be sold.
Excellent. Any comments or questions from the public regarding this? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee support and refer the following staff report to the next regular meeting of council. The council receives staff report P 2018-32 and enact and pass a part lot control exemption bylaw to allow for 12 lots to be created within blocks 11 and 12 of registered plan 51M-1124. Can I get a mover and seconder for the staff report? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Does anyone from the committee have any questions regarding this? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Excellent. 6.3, P 2018-33, extension of draft approval for a plan of subdivision, Trails of Collingwood, Helen Court Homes. Ms. Farrer, please and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a further year, and I'm sure to those around this table, they can remember this subdivision coming up for a number of years in the past. The reason that we are agreeing that it does need one further year is that they've done a number of soils tests. We're now coming up with a plan to try and determine what we are going to do with the impacted soils on this site. So they are working at revisions to this plan, and they are proposing to put some of the impacted soils that are on this site. It is a former apple orchard, and that's the reason that we have some impacted soils, and that's the reason the development has been held up now for year after upon year, frankly. But we are in favor from a staff perspective of one more extension while they do the reports and they figure out whether this proposed method of dealing with the impacted soils will be acceptable to all. We are in the process right now of doing a peer review at their expense, and so we'll get the results of that hopefully within the next month or two, and then we will be back with a revised plan showing how the development will change. And I admit, I didn't go into the background as to where it is. I think everybody's heard about this one time and time again over the last 4 years.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the public before the committee considers the report? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee support and refer the following staff report to the next regular meeting of council. That council receive staff report P 2018-33 and extend the draft approval for the proposed Trails of Collingwood plan of subdivision for a further year to October 20th, 2018. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Does anyone from the committee have any comments or questions regarding the report? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Bob, through you. I guess my question is, with the impacted soil that's going to be kept on the property, is there a need for a further public meeting regarding this development? I mean, it's been on the books for a long time, but I just asked that question.
Ms. Farrer?
Yes, thank you through the chair to Councillor Edwards. Yes, this will be going for, it will need another zoning amendment based on the fact that we will be changing the plan and we will be changing the zoning to indicate that there will be an area with impacted soils. So that further public meeting will, or that further zoning bylaw amendment will require a public meeting.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
No problem.
Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the red line outlines the development, correct?
Yes,
And
correct.
So does the town own the property to the east of that? Or is there a different owner landlocked there, or how does that work?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Jeffrey, there is a different landowner there. That property would be accessed by an extension of Cameron Street.
Oh, okay, all right. I was just wondering if the impacted soils extended into there, if there was some way of looking at them together and just dealing with it. And if it was our property, I would say we should have been doing that, but okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Cooper?
Through the chair to perhaps Nancy, just this has been on the books for a long time with change in owners and different visions on the property, and certainly an area that is sitting there ripe for development. When I look to neighboring properties and recalling the apple orchards there and the old gravel road on High Street some time ago, and I'm just wondering the length of time or remediation of Zancor homes on Telfer and Spruce Street. Was there the same, I don't recall the same issue back then or in that location, or is there a specific location or a treatment that has been used with the impacted soils?
And it shows through the chair to Mayor Cooper. You're absolutely correct. Did we go through all of these issues when we were developing on Telfer Road and in that area? I don't believe that we did, but I also would, and in truth, I'm sorry to date ours, but some of those were 25 to 30 years ago and the rules were different. So the times have changed. Certainly the legislation has changed, and we are dealing with situations today that frankly 30 some odd years ago we probably didn't have to deal with. And in truth, Mr. Chair, and to the rest of the committee, at that point the approver of our plans of subdivision was the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. So they were not handled locally, they were handled at 777 Bay Street, and they certainly were a different set of rules.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. Any Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Nancy. Nancy, I understand that we have a consultant that's going to peer review the proposal of the applicant for the soil remediation. In what kind of context would we use a peer review process, just to ensure that best practices are being met? I mean, is it just for environmental issues, or would it apply to other issues?
Yes, through the chair to the deputy mayor. We do, in many cases, we ask that reports that we receive are peer reviewed. And we do ask that they be peer reviewed when we do not have the expertise on staff to be able to thoroughly analyze them. For example, we don't pretend on staff to have an expert in soil remediation or impacted soils. We do have staff who can certainly handle other issues. But it's fairly common for us when we're dealing with issues that, for example, if we have a natural heritage issue, we don't have a biologist on staff. We will get that peer reviewed. So we have great staff, but most of us are basically generalists. So when there's a specific area of expertise that we do not have on staff, then it is fairly common process for us to have it peer reviewed by an outside source. Or that would be my perspective from a planning point of view.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Councillor Jeffrey, this is yours. 6.4, P 2018-34, authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement, Cameron Street Public School, 575 Cameron Street. Ms. Fair?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. This is expansion to Cameron Street School. We are very fortunate to be having 2 expansions to public schools in town at this point in time. It does show that we're certainly a growing community. This is approximately 15,000 square feet that is going to be added to Cameron Street School. The only interesting or slightly tricky discussion that we had with the school board was the biggest issue in this particular school is the drop-off zone, but we have worked out an arrangement where they will be installing a drop-off zone along on Cameron Street, and that will probably, or that according to our arrangement, will be built next year. And other than that, Mr. Chair, I'll certainly answer any question.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the public regarding this before committee? Seeing none. The recommendation is that the Development Operations Services Standing Committee support and refer the following staff report to the next regular meeting of Council. The Council receive staff report P 2018-34 and enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for an expansion to Cameron Street Public School, 575 Cameron Street. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? By Councillor Edwards, seconded by Deputy Mayor Saunderson. Any questions from the committee? Mayor Cooper.
Through the chair to Nancy and Brian, I just want to compliment you on working through the Kiss and Ride has been a challenge for quite some time that we've been hearing about, and holding conversations over the past probably at least 8 years. So I can appreciate that, and some safety, added safety value there with the expansion. I didn't, maybe I had overlooked something, I didn't see a reference, oh there it is, Birch Street. There also had been some concerns over drainage on Birch Street, and I wondered if that was being addressed in this site plan agreement, since there will be construction, some sort of construction happening. I know it is on town property for that part, but at the same time, if something will be remediated there.
Mr. McDonald?
Through the chair. Birch Street issue is, it's an open ditch and drainage works. The concern is that it's an open ditch near the sidewalk. We have a lot of locations where we have open ditches adjacent to sidewalks. During this particular application, we're not requiring them to make any changes to that. Their work is not in that area. It's all fronting over onto Cameron Street, so
Okay,
not at
thank you.
this time.
Thank you for clarification.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, passed unanimously. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Saunderson. Welcome back, Councillor Jeffrey. Nancy, at this time, through your phone call today, you are traveling to Sudbury to represent Collingwood. I wish you farewell, drive safe, and bring back lots of info.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
6.5, PW 2018-13, adoption of pedestrian crosswalk policy. Mr. McDonald, would you like to introduce?
Thank you. John Velick will be introducing this report to the committee and presenting the policy and the proposal.
Welcome, Mr. Velick.
Push this forward 6 inches, so, oh, okay, it's on wheels. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the policy we're proposing, we're proposing a policy for pedestrian crossing treatments, and the policy is based on the Ontario Traffic Manual, Book 15. Ontario traffic manuals are published by the Ministry of Transportation. There are about 22 of them in total, and they're to provide guidance related to traffic issues to practitioners, municipalities, engineering consultants. Most jurisdictions utilize the OTM manuals for traffic issues such as these. So in 2016, the ministry released Ontario Traffic Manual number 15, and it introduces new types of crosswalks that we haven't seen yet in the province, and we'd like to put a policy together to really dictate where and when we install these types of crossings, because we do get requests from the public for them, and we want a consistent approach when deciding where to put them. So when the engineering department receives a request for a location, we will review that location in conjunction with the warrants laid out in the manual. The warrants, really, there are 3 things must be met: more than 100 pedestrians in an 8-hour period, more than 750 vehicles in that same 8-hour period, and the site cannot be, the site must be more than 200 meters from another controlled crossing, and that's to eliminate the proliferation of all these controlled crossings too close to one another. The types of crosswalks, there are different configurations that we can utilize. They're based on pedestrian volumes, vehicle volumes, speed limits, and the number of overall lanes that they're crossing. And there's a matrix to the left that it's based on all those different criteria. You can select a different crosswalk. So these, so I'll just walk you through. There's kind of 4 main differences for 4 different types of crosswalks that we can install. And essentially, the busier the road, the more intensive the signage becomes. So the first one on your left there, that would be a local road, low traffic, low number of pedestrians, and it would simply be pavement markings and signs. The one to the right would be a little bit busier of a road, and it's essentially the same, but you would add a flashing light that would be actuated by a pedestrian push button. Busier still, the crosswalk on the left, we add another sign that goes over top of the road, and then finally the crosswalk configuration on your right is for the busiest type of road, and that would consist of one of those yellow signs you see them more in the GTA, but that would be the busiest. Any busier than that, and you would be looking at a traditional signal. So for next steps, really public education is quite important. These types of crossings are new to pretty much everyone in the province. And we need to make people aware of who has the right of way. The Highway Traffic Act, drivers have to stop and yield to pedestrians at these crossings. So we want to make everyone aware of that before we start installing them. We do have money in the budget this year to install one here in Ontario at the Georgian Bowl. So we're designing that now, and we're going to put it up. It'll be installed either this fall or more likely in the spring. And we're also looking at Huron Street in Niagara. We've had a lot of requests, especially in the summer, for people trying to get to Sunset Point Park. So we want to look at that and see what we can do there. And I'd just like to, unfortunately, make one correction in the policy that you have in your package. There was a section that shouldn't be there. It's just not correct. It'll be removed for the council package. It's just on the final page. And it just speaks about where crosswalks are not to be used. It was put in there. I apologize for that. Just make you aware of that. That's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the public regarding this before the committee considers it? Mr. Pretty. Come on up.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you to this council and the staff. This idea here, I think answers the call to where we're going as a town, and a town that's growing. I think the main thing is the attraction in Collingwood seems to be of a senior and kid-friendly. I noticed a ton of kid camps over the last 4 or 5 years that are using areas like Sunset Point. People along the west side, I know there's development proposals for the west side expansion. Downtown is getting a bit busy. It's interesting to read the 200-meter limits. One area for sure, I see a real problem at 4th and here Ontario Street. There seems to be a lot of intensification in that area, especially in the crossover from the variety store over. I don't know. I understand the idea to limit the repeated, lights, but I do see a lot of people going over, like, the worst one is right now. It just makes me angry. Over St. Marie and here Ontario Street, the amount of people I see go over the line, not fully stop. We've got a problem in town with people speeding. Honestly, I really think speeding is becoming a big deal. The trucks, people racing around town. Honest to God. And the one council, Mayor Cooper, cautioned me for swearing, and I did, because I would not personally ride my bike on First Street Road ever in my life. And I would say to anyone out there, do not do that. I think we need some signage that directs people to Blue Mountain properly.
Mr. Pretty.
And these pedestrian crosswalks are of value.
Thank you.
I'd like to see them as soon as possible. I think we're going in the right direction, and the time is now for this type of a design. So I want to say thank you to John here and Director McDonald and whoever else is involved. It's time that we start realizing that our little town is seeing city traffic in our small town, and we need to act on it. And I'm happy to see the result here, the 2 proposed that are being considered. I think it's a really big deal, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public that would like to make comment? Excellent. Seeing none, the recommendation is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee support and refer the following staff report to the next regular meeting of council. The council receives staff report P 2018- no, my bad. Well behind the game there, sir. Sorry. Thank you. that the Development Operations Services Standing Committee support and refer the following staff report to the next regular meeting of council. The council receives staff report PW 2018-13 and adopt the Town of Collingwood pedestrian crosswalk policy dated October 2018. And that council delegate authority to the Director of Public Works and Engineering to approve or reject requests based on the adopted pedestrian crosswalk. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Jeffrey, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Does anyone for the committee have any questions or comments regarding this report? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to John. So, by reading these, I assume then it doesn't give us enough ability to prioritize pedestrians at the crossings mid-block in the downtown.
No, because they would be within that 200 range of the signals.
Something I've noticed a couple times, and it happened to me again tonight, that I just wanted to mention, if you're trying to cross on the one from, say, the TD Bank to Town Hall, and we have the bus stop right there, but delivery trucks and Brinks trucks use it to stop at for the banks and things. If you're a pedestrian trying to cross, it's worth your life to stick your head out around one of those big trucks to see if there's something coming or not, even because the vehicles are prioritized. But you can't look to see what's coming if you don't stick your neck out. So I think that's something we should look at in terms of having big vehicles stop there on that side of that crosswalk.
I'm looking at that.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes, thank you, Bob, through you, to John. John, so I'm really excited about seeing those two possible crosswalks that are going in place by the bowling alley and then on Niagara. What kind would they be, just to give an example to the public of what kind of signage would be, or what type?
So the one on here, Ontario, can you go back?
It's a four-lane, both are four-lane highways, right?
So the one on Huron Street would have to be signal. Like you have at Chamberlain and High, it would be a pedestrian actuated red, like signal, red, green.
Oh, okay.
Red, amber, green light.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the number of cars and the width of the road. So at Huron Ontario, it would be the one on the left there. It would look like that, but 3 lanes wide. So you'd have the pavement markings, the advanced warning signs, the signs at the crosswalk, and then you'd have a flashing light that someone could actuate by pushing a button.
Activate.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a warning. That would just be a warning for motorists. Thank you, John. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
I think Brian is.
Mr. McDonald?
Just one cautionary issue on the one in Niagara, that is a provincial highway, and anything we do, we still have to get their approval. We're working through the process. We've done traffic counts, and we're going to be working with MTO over the next little while to try and get their support of it, but it does have to meet their warrants in order for the signal to go on a provincial highway.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes, to that point, if I may, sorry. With the speed of the traffic there, that would really be a traffic calming measure too. I think there are a lot of concerns about the speed of traffic in that area. So yeah, I can see that really working.
You're welcome, Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, and along the same lines, I was wondering, some of the bigger lights on highways, they have the yellow lights that flash, prepare to stop. Something that could be connected before the bend that says.
Well, we'd have to look at that. We'd have to look at the sight lines. I don't even know, but it's something we still have to review if we can put a signal right at Niagara. If the sight lines are there, if it's questionable, we could. If it's in the gray, we could look at a sign like you're talking about. Yeah.
Any other comments? Excellent. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. PW 2018-14, Assumption of Mare Mills Estate Subdivision Phases 2 and 3.
I will speak to that.
Mr.
Chair,
Relic.
for you. This is fairly straightforward. This is the Mare Mills Estates subdivision, Mountain Road and 11th line. Phase 1 is the area not highlighted. That was assumed in 2012. Phases 2 and 3 were draft approved in 2006 and 2007, with agreements being registered in 2007 and 2008. The obligations of the subdivision agreements have been satisfied, and we're prepared to assume those 2 phases. And I should also note that we will be assuming the stormwater management pond at this time as well.
Excellent. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. The recommendation is the Development Operations Services Standing Committee support and refer the following staff report to the next regular meeting of council. That council receive staff report PW 2018-14 and approve the assumption of all municipal works within phases 2 and 3 of the Mayor Mills Estate subdivision. And that council enact and pass a bylaw to assume the roads and infrastructure within the Mayor Mills Estate subdivision. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Anyone from the committee have any questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? That's unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. And I assume by you standing there, you're going to do the next one. 6.7, PW 2018-15 Van Dolder Subdivision Agreement.
Thank you. This looks very compressed from what I was working on earlier. Apologize for that. So this is a Van Dolder's industrial subdivision. This is at Mountain Road and 10th Line, just south of our public works yard. This was draft approved in September of 2017. They applied for a plan of subdivision in January of 2018, and the agreement and drawings have been finalized. We've worked through those this year. This is a block plan of subdivision, so each block will be subject to site plan approval. Block 1 is the red block in the bottom left corner that already has site plan approval. That's the Van Dolder's warehouse that was built earlier this year. The developer will be obligated to build the road and the stormwater management pond, which is in the yellow block, and the town will assume that once that's complete. There's one thing to note: the NVCA have not officially provided clearance for this project. They are extremely backlogged this year. They've taken 10 months to provide us initial comments that we just received last week. We see no major issues with the comments they've provided. We've reviewed the subdivision thoroughly. We're confident in the design. We really want to keep things moving. The developer still needs to obtain a permit from the Conservation Authority, and we feel that any major issues the NVCA have can be dealt with through that permitting process. We don't think any of the comments we've seen from them to date will materially affect the drawings or the agreement, so we're comfortable moving forward.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the public regarding this? Seeing none, the recommendation is the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee support and refer the following staff report to the next regular meeting of council. The council receive staff report PW 2018-15 and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the Van Dolder subdivision agreement by passing the attached authorizing bylaw, subject to staff receiving the remaining securities. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Jeffrey, second by Councillor Edwards. Does anyone from the committee have any questions or comments? Mayor Cooper.
Thank you. Just a comment, and I have said this before regarding the intersection in particular, but also looking at the close proximity of this Van Dolder's industrial subdivision to Ignore Glass and the sensitivity to the manufacturing of the glass. If we can just keep that business informed when there's any excavation happening so that they can be fully prepared for that.
Sure.
Please, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Moving on, reports and minutes of other committees. 7.1, the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes, September 19, 2018. Is there any staff members of the Heritage Committee who would like to address items within the Heritage Committee minutes? Seeing none, are there any questions or comments from the public before the Standing Committee receives the minutes? Seeing none, the recommendation is the Development and Operation Services Standing Committee receive and refer the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes of September 19th, 2018 to council for consideration. Can I move and seconder on the Heritage? Moved by Councillor Jeffrey. Seconded by Councillor Edwards. Any questions from the Standing Committee? Mayor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding page 112 or 3 of 6, reference to 133 here Ontario Street, addition and exterior renovations. It seems a little vague, and perhaps Nancy can, or Ms. Farrer can help clarify this at another time, but Mr. Gabriel described the proposal and also advised that if the committee supports the design and if the minor variance is granted. So it would be nice to get an update, hopefully before, or at least during the council meeting. Sounds a little soft. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call for the vote to receive and refer the minutes as noted to the next regular meeting of council with Mayor Cooper's addition of comments requested from Ms. Farrer. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Departmental updates, if any. 8.1 Planning Services. Mr. McDonald is looking across and so am I. Seeing none. 8.2 Engineering, Environmental Services, Fleet Facilities and Public Works. 8.2.1 Memo regarding the Transit Pilot Project 3-month service update, transit hours and service 3-month update. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As promised, we got permission from council to extend the hours for our service for all 3 transit systems, and we wanted to give you a it's a 6-month trial. I want to give you a mid-term report on that. This particular issue comes from the Labor Supply Task Force and the subcommittee they have on transportation, that they feel transportation is a key need for them to get labor to the various job opportunities throughout the region, not just in Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, and the town of Blue Mountains. So we've extended the hours on all of our systems so that they're consistent. And we've shown substantial gains in ridership on the Wasaga Beach and the Blue Mountains link bus. Very happy with the results we've seen. They range from 9% to 50% increase on some particular routes, and Blue Mountains are even higher. We did not see any increase on the Caltrans system until September. But I think we can attribute the September ridership increase to a new program that Georgian College put on, and they now have a program that's related to tourism, and they have a number of students that come from outside of the region, and they're using the transit system to get to jobs at the various resorts, whether it's in Collingwood. They're using it to get to school as well, so it's very successful from that perspective too. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we're at. There's also 2 other components to that, is public awareness of the transit system. So we're working on new maps, a digital sign, being consistent with our partners. Right now, Wasaga Beach has a map, we have a map, Blue Mountains has a map. We're trying to get it all amalgamated into one and have more consistency. And they're working on the private side of our committee. Our transit committee is looking at augmenting our systems through the winter peak programs, where we would be providing transit up to a certain hour, and they're going to have a look at ride sharing or private sector addressing how to get those various employees back home. So it's kind of a win-win. We look at doing it during peak hours up to a certain time frame, and then the after hours or the later hours of those employees, they can get home through a private partnership with the private businesses and a provider. That's it. It seems to be going well. We'll come back with a report at 6 months with a report to our respective councils and make recommendations in terms of continuing with the peak hours. We'll be looking at maybe there are some of these hours that we may not have to provide the service, but we'll look at it more focused on an hour by hour basis rather than the overall increase.
Excellent. Any questions or comments? I think it's tremendous to be up 87% in 1 month. Not really show it. Mayor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Reading the report, thank you, Brian, and to John, and ride sharing, and also Project 3, Awareness of Public Transit, Digital Maps and Signage. I didn't read in here, but maybe I've overlooked it. Will there be a potential of an app? Because you do see a lot of young people that have their phones, their iPhones, cell phones, their mobile devices, and if there's the potential one day to have an app for the phone.
This was a special program, so the report is only dealing with a special program, but yes, as part of our budget, we included a Where's the Bus app type that we're working with our current provider now, and we'll be implementing that in the next couple of months. But Wasaga Beach is also doing it, and we're doing it with ours as well as the Blue Mountain Bus. So it'll be through all of the systems. And you had noted John's name, but Chris Wisniak has been very instrumental in this program as well. A lot of it is due to his support of it, and it's a good program that we're all getting together as a team. The various public, private, both the counties, 3 municipalities, and the private sector. It's very successful.
Brings us to public delegations. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to the standing committee on any matter within our jurisdiction that has not yet been discussed this evening? You will be provided with 5 minutes before the committee. See none. Other business. Committee members. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to bring up something. A couple of residents had complained over the term with respect to, as owners of heritage properties, in terms of having neighbors who going through the building permit process, not being aware that they are adjacent to a heritage property and some of the things they might be able to do. Director Fair sent me a letter of confirmation she received today, just confirming that an HIA, Heritage Impact Assessment, is not required unless there's a planning application. So in the building permit process, I think what we need is some public awareness if you are adjacent to a heritage property, that we have that gentle conversation with them saying these are kind of some of the things you can do. So I guess my question through to Nancy tonight before she had to leave, I did ask her, is what things could we do in terms of that building permit process or public education ahead of them submitting those building permits to know what it is that they could do. So maybe if, I don't know what Nancy's response or when the timing of that would be, if it's the next council or the next council meeting, whatever she deems appropriate, I'm happy with. But I think we need to do a better job of, we know who lives, we know the properties that are adjacent to those heritage properties, and we should be able to do an education specific to those residents, just so they know.
Thank you. Any other business before the standing committee? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Jeffrey, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Enjoy your evening.